inside your mind. For most of us, right? Always. You know, we're all talking to ourselves. This conversation is the way that we think. The process of thinking includes an internal dialogue. Now, most people, you can talk at approximately a rate of about 150 words per minute, some people. Some people tend to talk a little bit faster. But we think at a much faster rate. And all of these thoughts, we pose questions with this internal dialogue to help us consider options, to look at the possibilities, to make decisions. So we pose questions to ourselves and we have a dialogue. It's not just a unilogue. You know, it's not just that there's one series of thoughts that follows logically for most of us. Most of us don't think quite that logically. No, we have a dialogue, most often an argument. Anybody ever argue with themselves? Especially when you're getting ready to communicate with somebody else who you know is going to argue with you. You take yourselves through the argument first to figure them out, to get prepared so that you have all your options down. And you have to go through all the different possibilities of what you know they'll say and what you'll say in response and what if they take a different tack and all that. You go through that whole process. And it's amazing how fast we can do that. We make statements with this internal dialogue, and these statements tell us whether we're happy or whether we're sad. They determine whether we're going to act or whether we're going to hesitate. Or maybe I should say how we're going to act. Or not act, which is the same thing. All of this internal dialogue that goes on constantly determines the quality and direction of our life. It determines how we feel, how we express ourselves, and how we then create the results in our lives. It would be a pretty good idea, wouldn't it, to get in touch with, to learn what the quality and the content of this conversation is, so that I can start to see how I'm affecting the direction of my life. Now, as I said, most people speak at about a rate of maybe 150 words per minute when they're speaking constantly, consistently. The average college graduate reads maybe at a rate of about 300 words per minute. So reading happens a little bit faster. And yet, you recognize when you read, your mind can take in all that information. The brilliant students who are working here are learning to read at a much higher rate, aren't we? Yes. It's possible to read at a rate of up to 3,000 words per minute with total comprehension. Higher than that, is it? 20,000. 20,000 words per minute with full comprehension. Whew, blindingly fast. But we don't just think in words. You ever have one of those experiences where your mind grasps a whole idea or concept? An idea or a concept that would take hundreds and hundreds of words to describe all that you saw in that one moment. That's how fast the mind thinks. The mind thinks in possibly thousands of concepts per minute, each of which would take maybe thousands of words to describe. You know how many thousands of words that is per minute? Millions? We have the ability to think at what would be the rate of millions of words per minute. And this is the inner dialogue that we want to get in touch with, because it's determining whether we're happy, sad, effective, what direction and quality our lives have. Can seem a little overwhelming, but it's possible. Because actually what we've learned to do is not listen. It's a strange wrestling match that we've got. I mean, I know that you listen to yourself more than you listen to anybody else. Isn't that true? Aren't you your favorite topic? Aren't you your favorite person? Don't you think you have the best advice of anybody in the world? Don't you usually think your thoughts are the right ones? Yeah. And again, some of you have heard this routine before over the last few weeks. Even when you think you're wrong, you think you're right, that you're wrong. That's one of your thoughts. And for some of us, that is one thought that we're very often right about, aren't we? That we're wrong. Some of us play that routine out. We have that thought going through, I'm always wrong. Sure, you're always right. You're so much smarter than I am. It's a thought that goes through the mind that affects the way that we feel about ourselves, which affects the way that we behave, which affects what we let ourselves be aware of. And that's what's called a self-fulfilling prophecy. The thinking that we have about ourselves determines the quality of our lives, and we prove that we were right. It's just how brilliantly creative we can be. We want to start listening rather than not listening. We've been taught to not listen to a lot of this conversation, even though we listen to ourselves more than we listen to anybody else. But there's a lot of the conversation that we've kept suppressed, and it comes out in other ways. I mean, you ever hear your mind thinking thoughts that you say, oh no, I don't want to think that about that person. Oh no, I shouldn't feel that. You know, you're sitting there trying to grab a hold of it. Oh no, 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 I'm supposed to be spiritual. We argue with ourselves more than with anybody else also. And it comes from not listening to the self-talk. And the self-talk is there 24 hours a day. If you want to find a tool that is transformational, I mean powerfully transformational, don't just look for that one big thing up in the sky that's going to cause, you know, when you finally get there, it will cause an explosion of enlightenment. And yes, enlightenment showers down on me, you know, I'm just waiting for that thing to happen whenever, whatever it is. Take something that's with you 24 hours a day. I mean, this can be even more powerful than maybe the one time that you sit down to meditate per day. Everybody here, I'm sure, does that once a day. Everybody here 2 times a day, 3 times a day? Well, you talk to yourself 24 hours a day. Some of us 25 hours a day. There's a tool that you can use constantly. In fact, if you think about it, anybody who's studied, say, the Christian mystics, the concept of constant prayer, it uses this process. Rather than trying to get rid of the thoughts that go through the mind, which is an impossible effort, rather than trying to get rid of those thoughts, start listening to them on purpose. Talk to yourself on purpose. That's what constant prayer was all about. So that I get to know what the thoughts are and understand what I'm trying to tell myself, what I'm trying to communicate to myself. See, the fact is there is no one, no mind in the universe that knows more wisdom than your mind knows. And if you'd start listening to it, you'd discover some incredible insights. In fact, it doesn't matter how much another being communicates to you that might be wisdom. Until you accept it and make it your own and tell yourself what that is, you're not going to believe it anyway. Isn't that the truth? You'll just argue. But you're not really arguing with them, you're arguing with yourself. You can sit there in your seat with the other person communicating to you. You may verbalize it as if you're putting it back to them, but what you're really doing is you're bouncing back and forth in your own mind the argument to see which of the beliefs or which of the approaches you want to decide you believe in. Which way do we want to go with this? You know, we spend so many years building this mechanism of basically a survival mechanism. We think at such an incredible rate, far beyond what we can consciously cope with and to decide. I mean, just right now, all the different things that your thinking process is coping with at this moment, dealing with the temperature in the room. Now, very likely, you weren't thinking a whole lot consciously about the temperature in the room, and maybe until I mentioned that, about the pressure of the seat, about your clothes and how they feel, maybe about the smell in the room, about what's going on around your peripheral vision and what you're going to selectively perceive. I mean, there's all this stuff going on. There's hundreds of thoughts going through your mind. There's an internal chemical process going on. Somebody in there is making some decisions about what your stomach is doing with the food that's in there. Or coordinating the rate of the heartbeat with the breathing. And all of these other complex mechanisms that are happening in your body, there's a part of you that learned to do that and can affect all of those aspects of working with your 5 physical senses and the physical body. Now, right now, you're not making a lot of conscious decisions about that. Who is? Who's in there? Yeah. Right. It would be a good idea to get to know that part of yourself, wouldn't it? It's with you all the time. At least I hope so. We've spent so many years developing this automatic survival mechanism. And sometimes it acts that way, like an automatic survival mechanism. It unconsciously makes decisions and helps us respond and react to external stimuli from the world around us, or even in a sense, the external stimulus that our body gives to itself to tell me what I need, when I need to eat. Something happens in there, and the mind says, it's mealtime. When I get tired and I need to sleep. Some of us don't listen to that one very well. And then the body has to go on a breakdown, the body breaks down, we start to listen to it and you respond. Everybody's got their own little set of stimuli that they respond to that determine our behaviors. But sometimes we don't listen to those things that, the stimulus that's coming in. Think about this. Doing experiments with rats. We tend to think that we're smarter than rats, don't we? Most of us. Maybe some of our friends aren't smarter than rats, but we're smarter than rats. Some people that I know, I wonder about that. But think about this. In doing experiments, you can put a rat in front of a little mechanism. The rat has to touch the lever, get an electrical shock, but he knows if he gets that electrical shock, a doorway opens and he gets fed. Okay? Now, the rat might touch that lever and get the shock and get fed. If you take the food away after a while, the rat will stop pressing the lever. Okay? After 3 or 4 or 5, however many tries it takes, the rat will stop pressing the lever. You think we would do that? It's a setup question, you know. We don't. We're not that smart. We believe there's cheese behind that door. We know there's cheese behind that door, and because I believe it, it must be so. I'll keep on pressing that lever and getting that shock. Or just keep, even if there's not a shock there, I'll keep on pressing the lever over and over and over again, while whoever it is that sets the door there and doesn't leave the cheese is just sitting there laughing at me. Ha ha ha. This guy isn't even as smart as a rat. Now, can you extrapolate that into how it works in your life? Anybody have any conditioned responses that used to work, used to get your cheese? And somehow it doesn't work anymore, but we keep on doing it. Anybody here ever, say in the last week, experience confusion? Would admit to it? Even just a moment of confusion. Okay, brave souls. There's a conditioned response. See, it used to get us a certain reaction. Doesn't always work now, does it? Not the same way. We used to get it when I'm a child. By being confused, I get adults to take a certain kind of responsibility when I'm not prepared to make a decision. Now, I do the same thing. I press that button and I wait for someone to take responsibility, and it doesn't happen. Or does it? Some of you may have found people who love to take responsibility for your life. At times, it does work, actually. That may be why we keep doing it. But in general, our beliefs are so powerful that produce the thoughts that we can get stuck in these conditioned response patterns and not understand why we're acting the way that we are, why our life is set up the way that it is, why we're not getting the results that we want to. And we don't understand even where the thoughts are coming from. We think that's who we are. I am those thoughts. And so we get to a point where we start to recognize there's a lot more. I need to start discovering more about myself. So, you do a whole bunch of things. And everybody here done a whole bunch of things to start the self-discovery process? Okay. You learn a meditation technique. And you take some affirmations, and you go with those affirmations. And you try to get the people around you to do it too. You get your people in your family to do it. There's usually one of these beliefs that if I can get other people to do it, then that will help keep me more disciplined. And maybe it will also reaffirm my belief that it works. And after a long period of time, I go from one technique to another, and get to the point where eventually maybe I have a breakdown. Physical breakdown, emotional breakdown, mental breakdown, or all three. You might do them all at once. You may be like some of us. We just kind of drag out the whole process, and we break down periodically. It's a habit. But you break down, and then at a certain point you might realize that even though you've broken down, you're still alive. And at some point, you feel all right about yourselves. Maybe just one day you realize, I broke down, but I'm still okay. In fact, I feel just as good now as I did back when I started this whole thing. I don't really feel any worse. I think a lot of different thoughts. Maybe I'm doing some different things, but I don't really feel any differently. And you start to realize, possibly realize, that it's not a matter of what has happened to you. Whether you're happy or not is not a matter of all the things that you've done or what has happened in your life as a result of that. What determines whether you're happy, whether you feel good about yourself, whether you're confident, what determines who you are is more a matter of what you told yourself about what happened. I'm going to go over that one again. Who you are, who you believe that you are, is not a matter of what has happened to you. Whether you did the meditation technique, whether you stuck with doing your affirmations, whether you did all of these different things. It's not a matter of what has happened to you. Who you are is more a matter of what you told yourself about what happened. What you tell yourself about what you do determines who you believe yourself to be. Your self-talk.
Does that start still when you are in the womb of the mother?
Excuse me, say again?
Does that start also when you are in the womb by the mother?
Does that start when you're in your mother's womb? Yes. Yes, absolutely. Starts before that, actually. And actually, we'll work a little bit with a way of visualizing and experiencing that this week. Getting back in touch as far as you can with that child and starting to recognize the thoughts as early as you can. You have a look on your face.
What I tell myself about what I do determines who I am.
Yes. Who you are, how you feel about yourself, is not a matter of what happens to you. It's not a matter of what you do. It's more a matter of what you tell yourself about what happens to you. Have you ever known, the same situation can happen to two totally different people. One person will tell themselves, well, I can handle that, and they'll handle it. The other person will be in the same situation. They'll tell themselves, I can't handle it. They'll deal with it a completely different way. And it will be a result not of the situation, it's a result of what they tell themselves and therefore how they follow up and act. Now that sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? It's the obvious. Why don't we do it then? Why do we get caught in such an obvious situation? It's a good question. We don't listen to our self-talk. It's not that there's somebody else who needs to tell you how to be more effective and more aware. Nobody else can tell you. Nobody else is closer to your own mind than you are. Nobody else has spent more time with your mind in the way that it thinks than you have. Nobody else knows that better than you do. And where do we usually go for all that information? We usually go to somebody, we pay them. Have you ever paid yourself for your own advice? Not usually. We pay psychologists. You know, we pay doctors for helping us deal with our body. We pay other authority figures for making decisions in our lives. But we don't pay and value ourselves and our own ability to figure out, to listen to what's going on. We've been taught not to listen to ourselves. Started happening right back at childhood. Back here, when I'm a little child, people keep on telling me, no, don't make decisions for yourself. We're the grown-ups. We make decisions. Do what we tell you to do. And I get this battle going on inside of me. There's this part of me that wants to learn experientially. You know, pick up everything and put it in my mouth and taste it and shake it and see what it sounds like. I want to use all of my experiences to find out what the world is about and learn through experience. But there's this whole other part of the world that's telling me, no, that's not the way that you learn. Learn by following what I tell you to do. And we develop a way of thinking that is in conflict, a way of learning that is in conflict. We internalize that conflict in our own self-talk. Has anyone here ever had one of those experiences where you're in the middle of dealing with a challenging situation and you hear phrases that you remember from your childhood, like your mother or your parent, your father? What are some phrases that you recognize? You're going, mm-hmm.
Oh, I tried to ski a couple of weeks ago, and I kept hearing myself tell myself I couldn't do that because I was going to get hurt. And that's something that, you know, my parents would say to me when I was growing up, you can't do that, you'll get hurt.
Oh, you can't do things if you get hurt doing them. Does anyone else have that belief? Maybe not. Actually, some people look forward more to doing things where they might get hurt. It's a different belief, a different set of thoughts going through the mind. Linda.
What I'm going through with my poetry lately, trying to get it together to publish, is I'll read something and I'll hear my mother's voice telling me once again that it's stupid stuff. Why would anybody write something like that?
Oh, yeah.
And so it's very difficult to get past that.
So there's one part of me that wants to be poetic and the other part that says that's stupid.
There's one part of me that knows it's very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
And another part of me says, this is stupid stuff. Nobody wants to read this shit.
Anybody in here ever wanted to write poetry? Anybody in here wouldn't admit it? There we go. John, congratulations. So there's a lot of thoughts that we have where I might say, I know I'm really a brilliant person. I'm really smart. And then there's the other part that says, no, that's a lie. You don't believe that. You're stupid. You're maybe not stupid. You're mediocre. You're average. Not too smart, not too dumb. Just kind of bland. Yeah. I don't want to be too dumb. You know, that's also unusual and unique. I don't know. Don't want to be too smart, just kind of fit in. You know, but then there's that other part that says, no, I want to be extraordinary. Now you. I had that little Charlie Brown image for a long time. Mm-hmm. Everybody, we all have so many of these thoughts in common. And one of the interesting things about it is that we have beliefs and thoughts that disagree with one another. And in this argument, we create tension and walls that keep us from going further, digging deeper and understanding what the root of these thoughts are, where the beliefs are that give birth to these thoughts. The fact is, you've all heard that phrase, the truth shall set you free. Often. Too often. One of those pithy phrases that people tell you.
First it'll piss you off.
Oh. Okay.
All right, Pamela.
Okay. There's a truth in that. But where do we usually look for that truth? Yeah, we go to a book, something that has great universal truth to it. The bigger the more people who agree with this, the more it makes it right. In other words, we go for what we think is right. What some other authority will tell us is right, some other person that we respect, some other person who can argue better than we can maybe. That's not the truth that will set you free. The truth that will set us free is recognizing what our own self-talk is telling us about ourselves. See, we spend at least 50% of our energy suppressing the self-talk that we've got. Suppressing, holding down below conscious level the beliefs that we have that cause us to act the way that we do. Even suppressing the thoughts that are running quickly through our minds. We find ways to cover them over so that we don't recognize why we're doing what we're doing. Getting in touch with our self-talk is not a matter of doing something that takes more effort. And yet, that's a likely belief that most of us have. In order to really face myself, to really confront me and all of those beliefs that I have about me, it's going to take effort. I'm going to have to steel myself up for it. And do you ever feel that? You want to just kind of shrink and hide away from it instead. It's a little bit easier to avoid. That's not the truth. We put so much effort into avoiding the self-talk that listening to it makes life easier. Remember that one. It'll make me sound awfully smart and wise. When you start to listen to yourself and then you get to one of those real intense moments where you're starting to realize some things that you believe are terrible about you and you think it's such an effort. Oh, the pain that I'm going through. I'm really digging in there and oh God, this is really what growth and stuff is all about. Yeah. We think that we have to invest a lot of energy into digging into that horrible past. You don't have to, actually. But if you like that kind of drama, then go for it, because it actually energizes you, doesn't it? You're more energized in that moment than when you're just kind of coasting along on automatic pilot and not listening to anything. Just do. If that's the kind of drama that you need to start getting in touch with the conversation that's going on, well, then go for it. At least it pumps you up. We're here to pump you up. Very good. The fact is, when we start to listen to all those thoughts that have been suppressed, it's going to release so much energy. We're going to work tomorrow morning with finding the self-talk in the body. Starting to listen to the physical body and where we store those thoughts. I don't want to go totally into all that right now. But I'm sure you're pretty aware. Anybody here ever have a pain in the neck? Okay. Or a pain in the ass?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody here ever know a pain in the neck?
Yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot more nods when I said that. Or ever know someone who's a pain in the ass? Okay? What makes them, okay, very good. What makes them a pain in the neck or a pain in the ass is not what they do. It's what you think about them. Get that one real clear. If you really want to start getting control of your life, if you want to become that powerful so that you can determine whether that person is going to be a pain in the neck or not, start to know your self-talk. Has nothing to do with what they do or don't do. It has everything to do with what you tell yourself about what they do. I like that. That was good.
If you listen to your self-talk, won't you also get in touch with how you really feel about things? I mean, you'll really know what your feelings are.
Yes. What Marilyn said was, if you listen to your self-talk, won't you get in touch with how you feel about things? Yes, absolutely. And again, we'll work a little bit more tomorrow with looking at how our beliefs create our thoughts. And those thoughts and beliefs create our emotions and feelings. And those emotions and feelings are actually behavior, and they create and lead to our behavior, the way that we express and communicate. That emotions are simply communications about our beliefs. Our emotions communicate to us what we believe, and they communicate to others what we believe. Starting to listen to the thoughts will help us get in touch with the beliefs that give rise to emotions. And not next week, but I think the week after next, we're going to be working very directly with emotions and learning to discover the cause that sets an emotion into motion, emotion, and learn how to be fully emotional and love it.
I like the way you're licking your chops, Steve.
When you say listen to the self-talk, that means listen to positive and the negative?
Listen to it as it is.
And hear it?
As it is. See, the interesting thing is, we tend to think there's positive and negative self-talk.
That's how it feels.
Oh, yeah. That's part of the self-talk.
Oh,
That's the judgment. That's a thought.
okay.
Okay? We want to learn to listen to the self-talk as it is. Start learning to take on the observer role. Practice observing so that we can see clearly rather than through the glass darkly, rather than seeing the self-talk through the self-talk itself. You get that one? Okay, we're going to come back around. No. We'll come back around to that one because that's a very important point. Learning to see it clearly has more to do with observing without judgment. But that's a trick because your mind is going to be full of the judgments. And I've got to get through all of those. You can't try to do it. This is not something that you can try to do. It doesn't work that way. Has anyone here ever worked with a biofeedback machine? Everybody been hooked up to a biofeedback machine? If you ever get hooked up to a biofeedback machine to help you practice relaxing and bringing the brainwave rhythms and the heartbeat down to a more arrested position, do that and actively try to relax. Okay, I'm trying to relax. What will happen is the heartbeat will go up, the breathing will increase, the brain rhythms will... You can't try to relax. When you stop trying, it naturally happens. The same thing, the same kind of process happens with inner listening. As long as you're trying to listen to the self-talk, you can't hear it clearly. All you're going to hear are the judgments that you have about your self-talk. We have to practice learning to observe, learning to accept, practice doing that. It's like background noise, okay? I mean, you get very accustomed to certain background noise. Your self-talk is the biggest background noise you've got. It's with you all the time. You don't want to struggle with it. You want to relax and start to become conscious of it. Becoming conscious of the self-talk is not that you have to hear it all at once. That would blow your mind, wouldn't it? But just to begin the process of getting in touch with the self-talk that is there. I'll do a little exercise with you for just a moment. Close your eyes. And I'd like you to imagine, create before you a black box. I'm sure some of you have done this before. Maybe not. In your mind's eye, create the image of a black box. Now this box can be any shape, well, square basically. Any size, can be made of any material, can be wood, can be a metal box. See that the box has a hinge on it and lift open the lid of the box. And what I'd like you to start doing is start putting into the box everything that you can think about yourself. Put your name in the box. Put your identity in the box. Put your talents and abilities. Anything you think about talents and abilities that you have. Imagine the talents or the word that represents that talent. Imagine that going into the box. Put your memories into the box. Just see your memories, all the past memories that you have, just streaming and flowing into that box. See all thoughts that you've ever had flowing into that box. Put your beliefs in the box. Put your relationships in the box. Put your hopes and desires in the box. Put your failures in the box. Put your fears in the box. Everything that you can think about yourself, put it in the box. Put your, say, your relationship with your mother, your relationship with your father, your relationship with your family, your friends. Put even your relationship with God in the box. Put God in the box. Whatever you think God is, put that in the box. And when you're finished putting everything that you can think about yourself in the box, close the lid of the box. With the lid closed, just want to ask you a question while you're still looking at the box. Where are you, inside or outside the box? Where are you looking at the box, from the inside or from the outside? And who is it that's there looking at the box? As soon as you answer that question, quick, open the lid and put that in the box and close it. Recognize that there is a part of you that isn't stuck with any of the labels, with any of the thoughts, a creative part that creates all these different impressions and images of you. Start to wonder. Don't answer. As soon as you answer who that or what that part of you is, open the lid, put it in a box, and close the lid. Just start to wonder and become curious about who that is. That is the creator part of yourself. And when you invoke that curious, wondering nature, you can open your eyes. Anyone here find themselves outside the box looking in? That's where most people find themselves, outside of the box, looking toward the box. There's this innate part of us that's aware, I am not all those things that I describe myself to be. Those are just descriptions. They're symbols. But there is a part of me that you can't just narrow down to a couple of symbols, to a description, to any amount of words. What we're going to be doing is not trying to describe that for you. That's a very important aspect of inner light consciousness. Nobody else can describe that. Well, if they did, all you need to do is put it in the box. What I want to do is start using all of that activity, because we can't just stop that activity, stop that thinking. Basically, it's because you can't stop doing what you don't know that you're doing. Follow that one? Most of us don't know how we start thinking in the first place. We don't know how the process of thinking goes about. Therefore, we're not going to be able to stop it. I need to start listening to it so that I can understand how it works. When I understand how it works, I can participate in doing it. And when I'm doing it, then I can direct how it's done, how I think. That part of me that was outside of the box, that is the creator self, it's not filled with all the judgments about me. It's not stuck and limited to all those different little perceptions that I put in the box. It sees the whole picture. without judgment. I want to practice being like that. Practice the way of thinking that just sees and observes and gets a greater perspective. If I practice thinking like that, I'm practicing the way of thinking that my creator self uses. And I'm becoming closer and closer to that creative creator self. A lot of different images for what that creator self is. Some people call it the inner self-helper, some the higher self. Some people call it the Christ in me, that creative being that gives life to me. There were tests done, I think by, I'm not sure if these were done by Jean Shinoda-Bolen or, what was the other woman's name? Dolores Krieger. I can't remember which one. But tests done of people who had multiple personalities. And they listened to the symptoms can change that much. Yes?
Couldn't, Steve, the different personalities can come from other lifetimes that you had already lived?
Well, where do these different personalities come from? Let me give you a real quick, short definition of where these different personalities can come from in an individual who experiences multiple personalities. If you're not in possession of your own mind, you can be possessed. If you possess your own mind, if you take charge of your own mind, then you are in charge of your mind. But most often, what what we're calling different personalities, where they come from is different fears within me that are struggling with one another. And most of us experience that to one degree or another. We're all possessed to one extent or another. Sometimes there's this one part of me that is really wanting to go for it, and this other part that's just not feeling good. And it depends on what mood I happen to be in, what happens around me that will decide which of those parts of me is in charge and in control. And they argue with one another. We all experience that. And our body chemistry changes, the way that we view and perceive what's happening to us changes, the way that we act, therefore the results, and the self-fulfilling prophecies that we can create, they can change. They said there are these different personalities within each one of us, but they discovered in doing these tests that there's one particular personality that they usually found in all these different people that they ended up calling the inner self-helper. And this inner self-helper, they said it was a non-assertive personality. It would never assert itself unless the others asked it to. And that's a very important aspect to this. It was the inner self-helper that helped to bind the others together and overcome the inner disharmony. But the most important aspect that we need to know about is that it's not going to do anything if we don't ask it to. And how are we going to ask it to if we don't know where it is, who it is, how to communicate with it? Usually, we only ask it to when we're in dire straits, you know? When our life is just about to fall apart and then we scream for help. Now, if you were that inner self-helper, wouldn't that bother you a little bit? You know, the only time he calls on me is when things are really going bad. He doesn't really like me. Just wants me to fix things every time. Now, I would tend to think that from my judgmental perspective, but that's not the way the inner self-helper responds. What we want to do is start to create a conversation, an ongoing conversation with that inner self-helper. Not by defining who and what it is, but by asking. By saying, I want to get to know you better. I want to find out where you are. I know you're in there somewhere. I know that you are the key to what makes my mind work. And I don't want to narrow and limit my perception of you. I want to be eager like a child. And with that eagerness of a child, begin to discover more and more of an ongoing communication and relationship. There's a lot more that I wanted to say about that, but I think that right now what we're going to do is take a break. I can see that even though you were all talking to yourselves when we began, some of you have come to a screeching halt. There are some looks in the eyes here that are, We're going to take a break, and when we come back from the break, we're going to describe first a little meditative process of getting in touch with the inner child and the parent in us, and then beginning to establish an ongoing conversation with this inner self-helper. Break until, 9 o'clock? 20 minutes.
Ooh, gosh. I'm not nervous. We'll cover some topic of self-talk this morning, and as David mentioned, Reuben mentioned that I had the privilege of working with Paul on self-talk and co-authoring a book with Paul when I lived up at Hearthfire Lodge. My experience with self-talk began, or my awareness of it, my experience of it began, I guess, when I was this big. But my awareness of self-talk began in 1984. I went to see Paul for counseling. And at the time, I wasn't feeling very good about myself, about my life. I had known Paul for a number of years. I'd taken quite a few of his workshops. I had been in what they call a Chela program with Paul, where those were the dedicated type students, or students who wanted to go beyond. And I had taken workshops at ARE. I had tried different types and techniques of meditation. And I felt like I was stuck. I felt like my life wasn't working. I was doing these things, but somehow I was not changing. I didn't feel good about myself. I didn't feel spiritual. And I went to Paul somewhat embarrassed to tell him, Paul, I've been around you for so many years, and I've done all these workshops and techniques and tried these things, but, Paul, I'm stuck. What's the matter with me? What's wrong? What's missing? And I talked to her about 30, 40 minutes, and Paul just sat there and listened and nodded and listened. And, my personal experience with Paul is I feel loved. No matter what I say or do, I've always felt accepted and loved around Paul. I felt a quality there that I could make myself vulnerable and be honest and say things that I normally would not say to people because I didn't want them to think about me in that way or know I thought that way or thought me to be something else. I was always conscious of having an image and a self-image around other people. And with Paul, I felt like I couldn't get away with that because I felt like he saw right through me anyway. So what's the point? In trying to, and I actually had experienced, I'm almost feeling as if I was naked. I mean, seeing that, that's, I can't hide anywhere. So Paul listened, and I felt loved and supported, and I felt I was in this cocoon and environment of I was okay. And even as I was saying these things, they seemed trivial. They seemed as if, I'm coming up with these excuses and reasons, but it's not working even now with Paul. I can't convince him how miserable my life is. He's not buying it. So he went on and wrote this on this little piece of paper. He wrote these things down, and he handed it to me. And he said, here, do this every day for 40 days. And he gave me a prescription. And he said, this is what I want you to try to do. Do this. And then we talked a little bit about it. And he explained to me what he had given me and told me that what he perceived was that the challenge or the problem I was having, right, at the moment was with myself, what I tell myself and how I deal with myself. He said, there's a little child inside you and there's an adult. And what's happening is these two aspects of yourself are not in harmony. The little child and adult don't like each other. And it's you that doesn't like you. And I didn't understand. I said, well, what do you mean, Paul? I don't understand what you're talking about. And as we talked a little bit more, I said, oh, yeah, I started to identify things inside myself, like the parrot kind of sound like my mother used to sound when she scolded me. Had that kind of intonation and voice. And the little child in me would rebel, would not want to listen, would feel punished and abused, and would try to get back. What I discovered through that was that I had basically a negative self-image. I walked around for most of the time with negative thoughts. Sure, I said the bee-haws, and, you said your affirmations, But inside, deep down inside, there's a little voice that said, bullshit. That's not true. And those things would work for a little bit, like taking an aspirin, but the headache would always come back. And I started to use the prescription, and at first it was very difficult for me. I had a challenge with it. I really did, doing the exercise. I had a challenge listening to myself and telling myself that I loved myself. And it felt so corny and stupid. And then I started to really feel that I don't really love myself, I can feel that. Because I would say these things, and then, I'd go on to do something else, and I would feel these negative thoughts come in. I would feel negative about myself. I would be angry. I would get mad at myself and call myself stupid. Why did you do that? What's wrong with you? And I became shocked when I realized how much of my own energy was spent on feeding myself negative thoughts. And I never would have admitted it. No, I don't think that. I'm a spiritual person. So I felt caught between this vice. Now I'm supposed to be this spiritual person because I've done all these spiritual things and hung around this spiritual man and this fellowship. And yet at the other side, deep down inside, I felt like I was a rotten person. And I was caught between this rock and a hard place. Who am I? Who's really in there? Am I spiritual? Am I stupid? Rotten, no good kind of guy. I started to, what happened too, the process that these experiences started to surface, I kind of opened a door. And the door was to my childhood. And things started to come up, experiences. And I could remember and hear my mother telling me that I was stupid. What's wrong with you? Don't you understand? Why do you do that? Don't do that. And it wasn't very pleasant because for the most part I like to remember my childhood as being happy and pleasant. And what I realized is there was large parts of it that were blocked out. I didn't have memories for it. And then I started to realize why I didn't. And as this stuff started to surface, there was a part of me that wanted to push it down. I don't want to deal with it. I just didn't want to. I'm a spiritual person now. And what I realized was, it was like, I don't know if, I know some of you are European, but in America, most people who have nice lawns have a problem with lawns called crabgrass, this unwanted weed. And if you try to pull the crabgrass off the top, you'll take the leaves off and cut it off at the surface. But crabgrass is very tenacious. It has a long root that goes down, and it comes right back up again. And unless you get down there and dig the root out, it'll just come back. So what I realized I was doing, too, was I was trying to cut the crabgrass off at the top, and I wasn't going down and getting to the roots of it. There was still these core beliefs there that were very powerful and very strong. And even on a subconscious level, I was feeding them. What the brain has the ability to do is respond to the strongest thought forms, memories, idioms, that are, whether they're right or wrong, good or bad, supportive or unsupportive. The subconscious mind will support that is strongest within it. And I felt as if I was fighting this beast that I had created. It's like a Frankenstein, The doctor comes up with this, creates this Frankenstein, and next thing you know, oh my God, this Frankenstein's stronger than the doctor is. And the doctor can't overcome it. Isn't it interesting? And you apply that to the internal, that story. Why? That stupid story is a horror story. And my belief is, what I see life, it's true. Most of us are doctors, Dr. Frankensteins, and we'll create this monster, and we'll empower this monster. And then we'll believe that this monster controls us. I started working with the techniques, and, it was a roller coaster ride, to be honest with you. I'm not saying in 40 days I was like, wow, it's great now. I have noticed from my own personal experiences, life has to do with a spiral effect. You go up on the spiral, and you come back around, and you may deal with some of the same patterns, problems, issues, whatever it is, but you come back around on a higher level. That's my experience. And I noticed that with the self-talk, that I would come back around again and around again. But what I noticed happening for me is a certain strength and foundation and stability starting to be built within myself. That a strength and stability of love. And that the best thing I could do for myself was to love myself. Honestly, to love myself and accept myself. And I noticed that my tolerance for myself was in direct proportion to tolerance to other people around me. How I dealt with other people. And the things that bothered me about other people. What they did or didn't do. And I noticed those things that other people did or didn't do were directly related to how I related to life. And one of the greatest examples to gauge myself was to be around children. Because little children have an ability to push a button and to test tolerance and to test patience. And Edgar Cayce said in a reading that if you want to learn love, learn patience. And that was in direct proportion to learning love and understanding love. And I found that fascinating because I found for me the best way to deal with that was with children. And being around children and seeing how much I accepted little children and how much they bothered me. Love is patience. And on this plane, my experience and observation, that's probably one of the hardest lessons to learn, is patience. We all want it now. And it takes a certain level of tolerance to have patience. It takes a certain ability to accept what is happening now and accept myself. And usually we're always demanding on ourselves and pushing ourselves and shoulding on ourselves. I should. And I should blocks our ability to accept ourselves and have patience. Because we need to do that now, we should do that now, we're supposed to do that now. All the impositions of life put on us because we are directly affected by that's around us. And life teaches us that way. Don't give yourself a break. Anyway, what I discovered through this experience with Paul is that I have a little child inside of me. And this little child wants to play and wants to enjoy life and wants to express. And I have another part of me that's the parent part. That's the parent part that wants to control, that wants to be in control and tell the child what to do. Have you ever noticed that when you go to a store or go out shopping or go out in the world and notice a parent with a child and they're about to go into the store and they'll stop and they say, now don't, you can't, don't. And they put all this stuff on the child. You better behave, you better not misbehave, and don't embarrass me, please. And as soon as the kid gets in there, he's pulling, he's tugging, he's doing this, he's doing that, and the parent's doing this with the child and trying to keep the child under control. Very much concerned that if other people see that child out of control, that means that I am not a good parent. We do that, what I discovered with myself, is I do that to myself. That's how I deal with myself. Or had pretty much. I did not want to look stupid in front of other people. I had to act like a serious, responsible adult. You know, I take life seriously. I'm always worried and concerned. I mean, God, there's a war going on, the economy's falling. There's a lot of things to worry about in life. I don't have enough money. My God, what am I going to do tomorrow? My car's breaking down. Da-da-da-da-da-da. And if you go around acting carefree and happy and joyous, then you're not being responsible. Yeah? You're not a responsible person. If you really cared, you'd wear this heaviness on you all the time. I kind of took it to the extreme with myself, actually. I really didn't enjoy myself that much. And I hope you can see that I've changed. Because I have. And I do enjoy life more. I am a lot more tolerant of myself. And I noticed I have an ability to accept other things and people more. And sure, I'm still got my little things. We all do. It's kind of like a snake shedding its skin, you know? You shed the skin to grow new skin. And sometimes there's a belief that that's a painful experience. No pain, no gain. And what I found is that that's not necessarily true. You don't have to have pain to have gain. I didn't have to punish myself to make myself better. Even through the process that I had with the self-talk. Feeling like now somebody's got to pay for this. I've got this abused little child in me who's very fearful and very afraid and very hurt. And I've got this other side of me that's a parent. And I was alienated from myself. And it was quite a shock to discover that it was all on me. Maxwell Maltz wrote a book 30 years ago called Psycho-Cybernetics, and we're going to talk about this some in the next session afterwards. And Psycho-Cybernetics basically says that you are what you think. 98% of all illness is mental. Basically, how you feel is a choice you make about yourself and life. It isn't caused by something or someone else. Even if the economy is falling and there are wars going on and people are homeless and there's a threat of nuclear warfare, and whatever's going on, doesn't mean that I have to feel whatever. And I discovered too that I had only really the responsibility to be happy. And that was probably for me one of the hardest hurdles, because I felt like I didn't deserve it. I still had to overcome these feelings of lack and self-worth. And then how can I just be happy when I have these other things in my life not apparently working? I took the prescription that Paul gave me and I did work with it, and I still do. And I find that it's kind of an ongoing process, that when did the little child in me ever grow up? When all of a sudden did I become an adult and not a little child anymore? And what I noticed, what I discovered was, well, it just kind of is still there. The little child never went away. The little child, for the most part, was afraid to come out and express, being that I would make myself look stupid. And that most of us who are adults are very stuck. You know, one of the interesting things I learned about through acting, and I am discovering acting is a fascinating process because it gives you the ability or the space to create other things and experience other things. And in the last few months, I've got to play a Jew in Russia who was poor, and now I'm going to be playing somebody who's Greek, and hanging around Greek people and learning their way of life and how they think. And I'm doing a character now who's just it's a black comedy, and it's absurd, and yet the absurdity of it. Well, anyway, the point is that what I discovered in studying and reading books is that to be an actor, you have to take on the beliefs of a character. And from the beliefs come attitudes. And that's all it amounts to, is that you take on these beliefs. You put them on, you wear them. And then you become this, it starts to happen. You start to think this way or feel this way in ways you may not necessarily would have. Because when I'm not acting a character, I'm playing me. Now, who's me? This set of beliefs. And you look at all these different people out here, and what's the difference? We all come from the same source, the same Father, the same energy. We all come from someplace, and yet we're all uniquely different. Besides coming from different countries and languages, what's the key? What is it? And what you look is that you see a different set of beliefs and attitudes in each one of us. That's all we are. We take this on, this set of beliefs and attitudes, and we act it out. And then it becomes an automatic process. It's like you ever have, you know, cruise control in the car? Well, you can set your cruise control, and then you can kick back, and the car takes over. And the cruise control is like a set of beliefs and attitudes. Once we have those, then we can kick back. You can meet people that you haven't seen for 20 years and recognize them instantly. Did you ever notice that? Have you ever had that experience? Haven't seen somebody for 10, 15, 20 years, and they're the same person. Well, they change a little, maybe they're a little fatter or they're bolder or whatever. But basically, you recognize that person, that's them. They haven't really changed. That same set of beliefs and attitudes has gone on, and they've just gotten older, but they're basically the same person. Feeling this, that's what I am, but I can't help it. You know, I just can't help myself. That's just the way I am. That's just the way I believe I am. Now, why is it that somebody who can act or do acting go from one character to another? You know what I'm saying? Change this, take on this new set of beliefs and attitudes. And if you watch actors, you'll see them in different roles, and they're different people. Meryl Streep is one of the best. Meryl Streep is incredible. She's like a chameleon. She'll take on and totally transform herself. And you can notice it physiologically, her body, little things about her body, and her accent, the way she speaks, and subtle things, the subtle things. And she's incredible, and she takes on, she becomes a different person. And then I think, well, how come we don't do that? How come those of us who aren't, we're just the same kind of person all the time? Why don't we change? Why are we this set of beliefs for the next 30 or 40 years? It's fascinating, isn't it, when you think about it? And yet, that set of beliefs that we are is very viable. There's a strong foundation that we've built that on. Our core beliefs are very strong. Our subconscious mind, which is a vehicle for us to use, the mind absorbs, takes in experiences, and learns at a very early age. And we start building in things about ourselves. Oh, he's a shy boy. Oh, she's so cute. And we go, so cute. Oh, he's lazy. Oh, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. What's wrong with you? And we learn how to get love and acceptance. One of the things that happens to us when a child is born, the child becomes the center of the universe, this little baby. And all this little baby knows is that it is the center of the universe. Every little whimper it has, every little cry, every little scream, it's attended to. Oh, how cute, it's cuddled over, it's petted, it's changed, it's fed, all its needs are met, it's loved, it's worshipped. And then at a certain age, around the terrible twos, the little baby grows up, and now the little baby has to be responsible. The little baby has to learn not to make messes. Don't do that. Gets his hand slapped. Mommy's on the phone. Stop. Shh, shh, shh. What are you doing? And the little baby now discovers now that the little things that it did before are not getting the love and attention and approval that it once did. But this little baby now has developed a need to have other energy, other people give it approval and acceptance and love. So what we have is that transition period called the terrible twos, when the little loving baby now has to start to fit into the family structure and into life and cannot do the things that it did before. And we start developing patterns, the way we relate. We become good little kids, or we become bad little kids. We make messes, or we help mommy. We're helpful. We start developing these ways of getting our need and our desire to be loved and accepted and approved of satisfied. We start building them, building these things. And we grow up, and then we start going to school, and some are good kids in school, and some are, I was a bad kid in school. You know, I did a lot of things to get attention, and I didn't do my, and actually I was not a very left-brained child, and I didn't know that, but I thought I was stupid, and I was very embarrassed. And I remember thinking for the first 3 years of school how stupid I was because I didn't understand like mathematics and how to diagram sentences like other kids could pick up on. But I never said anything to anybody because I didn't want to be stupid. So I acted like I knew what I was doing. And I just barely made it with school, and I would copy things from kids, and I would just do whatever I had to do other than to admit that I didn't understand because I didn't want to be stupid. And today we have that in a situation starting to be discovered that little children, there is right-left brain thinking. And certain children can be dominant right-brain thinkers, thinking concepts, thinking images, and other kids are more left-brain dominant, and they fit into a left-brain school system, line upon line thinking. Children who are very right-brain usually are very creative. And what happens is, for the most part, when they believe they're stupid, is they start suppressing themselves. No, I'm not really stupid. And they grow up feeling less than. Their self-esteem is lowered. And our school system that's supposed to teach kids actually can put out children who are less than and inferior. Well, simply because of their beliefs about themselves. Not because they're inferior, simply because of their beliefs about themselves. it is stated that for the first 15, 16, 17 years of life, most kids will hear don't do, can't, maybe 175, 200,000 times in their life. And they grow up with these images and this self-talk, this input about how lacking they are and they shouldn't. And we tend to suppress ourselves. So it's no wonder that we end up becoming adults who are very, very rigid, if you want to, very stuck in our ways. And we find at that point it's very difficult to change because we have built this foundation within us that's very strong and very powerful, and it may have a lot of negative self-image, self-talk. The mind has an ability to absorb and take in, and what we do is we take in experiences, input and experiences around us, and then we process that. We process it through its subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind builds memory cells. Now, the fascinating thing is the subconscious mind doesn't have the ability to rationalize. It doesn't take input and say, that's good, that's helpful. Yeah, right. It takes in whatever the input is and stores that, feeds it, does not rationalize, cannot rationalize. So whatever we put in there is what we get back out. It's a computer. Whatever you put in is what you get back out. Right, garbage in, garbage out. Right? I mean, that's an old term. But those things that we put in, and most of that, our input from as a child is the base of our core beliefs about ourselves. Our self-image is built on that. And our self-image is built. It's not something we're given, or not something, it's built, it's created by us. Just like an actor will create a character. You start acting out a character. You start thinking like a character would think. How do you become a character? You have to think like a character thinks. You have to run the thoughts through your brain. You ever watch it? You ever watch on TV? Particularly, I say TV because in TV everything's like right in your face. You can't. The camera doesn't lie, as they say. The camera tells the truth. When you're watching an actor, they're not always talking or acting. There are moments when an actor is just there. And what's going on in their brain? They're running and thinking the thoughts of the character in their brain. That gives them the impulse to come out and act like the character. And if you're not acting or saying dialogue, then you're running the thoughts through your brain to, quote, stay in character. It's not just saying my line, blah, 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 blah. That's not it. It's becoming a character. What we don't realize so much is that we can change these thoughts and beliefs about ourselves, and that for the majority of the time we are on automatic pilot, or that we're being controlled by the subconscious mind. Our subconscious mind has been built by our input and what we fed it, and now we're eating out of our garden, so to speak. You know, we've done planted the seeds, and now that's what we're getting. And then we wonder why we can't do things like bihas and affirmations and say these little things that will change us overnight when we've got these strong core beliefs. What's happening is the subconscious mind will act on that is strongest, that's the strongest within ourselves. Oh, I never have energy. I'm always tired. And you say, no, I got energy. I'm tired. I'm always tired. I'm always tired. We can say words mentally, maybe 300, 350 words a minute. We can think maybe 50,000 words. They have no idea. 10,000 words, 100,000 words in a minute. In 1 minute at a time, boom. Because we can think in concepts and images that contain thousands of words. And we're trying to overcome them by saying, yes, I'm a spiritual person. Yes, I love myself. And saying these words, and we've got these strong core beliefs in us, you see, that will override that. Because that is strongest wins. Simple as that. That strongest wins. And you get stuck and you hit the wall. Okay, now what? You mean I'm stuck? That's strongest? How am I going to change it? Well, you created it, huh? You know, that's the aspect that we feel we're not quite connected with. I made it so I can change it. listening to my own dialogue has been a real key. And listening and being aware of what other people say and what they tell themselves and hearing their thoughts. Is it true? Is that real? And what we do tell ourselves does determine how we feel and think about ourselves. So a man thinketh, so a man becometh. Edgar Casey said that one of the things that always stuck in my mind. You are what you think. You are what you eat. You done created it. I can love myself by simply loving myself. As simple as that. And one of the things that helped me personally was I did a workshop that allowed me to express myself and allowed the little child to come out. And it was an improvisational workshop. And what I discovered was I really didn't know myself totally. There was parts of me that had been buried and kind of hidden back there and not expressing, because I always expressed what I thought I should, wanting to get acceptance and approval from other people and not looking stupid. And what I discovered with this particular scenario was that I was in a safe environment and I was all right. I could. And everybody else was doing the same thing. And it was funny, at first everybody was kind of tedious. And then by the end of the 6 weeks, people were just doing the craziest stuff and expressing and getting out their creativity and getting out the little child. Because you ever notice how little children play? How they run around and play? And they can go from one imaginative thing to another imagination, which is the key. Most of us, when we get to be adults, have stymied our imagination. And that is the key to how to acting, is you must have a vivid imagination and think, what would it be like? What if I was da-da-da-da? What if I was in Russia? Well, how would I feel? What if I was? What if? And kids can do that. They can play. Watch them back here sometimes, how they play. They're playing Star Wars 1 minute, right? And then they're off playing something else. And then they have different relationships with one another. This is imagination, the imaginative part of them. And as we become adults, most of us who are in arts or have art backgrounds or expressing in art are allowed to be imaginative and creative for the most part. And most of us who get jobs that are just accountants or jobs that have to do with left brain thinking and this type of thing will not use our imagination. And imagination is just simply a tool. You know, it's okay to act silly and stupid. It's okay to let the little child out. And it's okay to walk down the street and trip and fall down and not call yourself stupid. Listen to what you're telling yourself. Listen to how much of that is real. Pick up on it and become aware of just what you're telling yourself. The little things that you do. The little things. Listen to the voice of your parents, the mother and father within you. And what I discovered was that even though my mother had been dead for like 20 years or something like that, she was still very much alive and still influencing me. And she wasn't there. It was me. It was me. It was like, wow. And I still wanted to hold her accountable, which is interesting. Yeah, we do have a cast of characters that are in us, and we have voices. Is there simply just a parent and child that talks to us? Well, there's a lot of voices. We have a lot of different aspects. You listen to yourself, how many different voices are going on, and who's talking to who? You ever think about that? Who really is listening and who's talking to who here? But I'm always talking to somebody because my mind just constantly is going. Now, I can control what direction that goes in as opposed to feeling like I'm this boat that's adrift and I go wherever my mind takes me. I can't help it. I can't help it. That's just the way I am. That's me. Oh, that is? Yeah. That's just the way. That's me. Can't help myself. We have a lot of characters. A mother, a father, a school teacher, a priest, whoever, our brothers, sisters, influences, those that influenced us in our early age. You can probably find them, and you can probably find you relate to people in that way, people around you, particularly immediate family. Okay, what we'll do real quick, I know you'll get a break soon. I want to diagram this little prescription Paul gave me. Excuse me? This thing here. What Paul gave, I'm sorry. What Paul gave to me that day in this little prescription was this here, right here, basically, piece of paper. He had heaven written on the top, he had hell written on the bottom. He had Paul on one side, and he had Eddie on the other side. Actually, I think it was little Eddie. And little Eddie was the child, obviously. My name being Paul Edward, and Paul being the parent, the adult. And what he said was going on is these two were fighting each other. They weren't listening. They weren't in harmony. And what he pointed out was that there was a veil here. And on the other side of the veil was heaven, the Christ child up here. And he said basically, that's what was going on. Hell. You're living in hell. And he said, if you don't like it, move. Pack up and move, you know. Just go on to heaven. Well, there's this veil there. And this veil is made up of these beliefs about myself. I'm not good enough. I don't deserve it. It'll never happen to me. And I had this going on. What he said to do was meditate every day. 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. And talk to yourself on purpose. Have the parent talk to the child and tell the child, I love you. I accept you just the way you are. And I love you just the way you are. Say those words and feel it. I went on as far as doing that, actually visualizing that self, feeling myself, hugging myself. And what was interesting at first was there was a distance. I had this, like I felt like this little child. When I saw it, the first image I had was this ragged little child. It was like, ugh. And I started to work with this imaging where I was actually holding myself. And then he would say, now talk to heaven. Talk to heaven and ask heaven, the Christ within you, and just talk to it. Without really saying, I wish, why can't I? Talk to the Christ. I want to get to know you better. I want to get to know you better. I want you to influence my thoughts and my feelings, particularly with the little child. I want you to be my guide, opening the door. I want you to rule my life. And then he said, now go to the other side and have the little child talk to the parent. I love you. And I accept you. And I understand that you love me. And I do know that you care about me, and you're trying to do the best you can do. And then have the child talk to heaven. I want to get to know you better. Pretty simple, huh? And what I noticed happening with the child will happen that when you're in the mode or the character of the child, children you get excited and are expectant. This sense of expectancy, this sense of excitement. And visualize the child being hugged by the Christ within you. And what's interesting here now is that the tendency I had was to God's out there somewhere, you know, way up there or out there. And I had this block about feeling that I actually had God in me. You know what I'm saying? About feeling that there actually is God in me. That I'm talking to myself. What's really neat about this is that you can do this even during the day, being conscious. You can be driving along. And of course thinking about the things you should have done, you didn't do. Why don't I do that? I'm going to start on, or whether I'm going to start dieting tomorrow. I need to exercise, all these, and stop for a minute and laugh. Tell yourself, I love myself just the way I am. Because if there's an all-accepting God that approves and loves and accepts us just the way we are, then why don't we do it? What keeps us from being able to be in that state, God-like? So you act like God. You know, play the character of God. What's interesting is that my personal beliefs, I don't think God talks like us, you know. I don't think he uses kind of the words we do in the sense of our beliefs, our ways of limiting our expression of life. And then start listening to yourself and listening to the little child inside you. And when you get those impulses, and we all get those impulses when a little child wants to do something, whether you want to go have an ice cream, or I'd love to go buy that and wear something outrageous, or whatever it is, and follow the impulses. What adults tend to do with children is they stifle their impulses. Children always are expressing impulsively. And what adults' job is to make sure that child is good and behaves, right? And either gets the smack in the hand or told to be responsible or kept in line. Now there's a balance to it. That's not to say that one should be totally irresponsible and run around and express, but to say that we as adults will edit our impulses. Just like our parents edited our impulses. You're having too much fun, you're making too much noise. Right, God forbid. You should have fun and enjoy yourselves. Look at us. And listening to my impulses, responding to my impulses as children, and realizing there is a child in me. Now, you may take it may take a while. You know, some of us have done a real good job of storing away the little child. And what the tendency at times can be to do is feel negative about ourselves. A negative thinker doesn't necessarily overcome himself by, now I'm going to think positive. What the cross side of that can be is, now I feel more negative about being as negative as I am. So it's a fine line between that. Yes. You're supposed to have a microphone? I'm sorry, I was told that.
Is it on? Okay. Is what you're saying then that rather than trying to take this negative thing that we have, we're always beating ourselves up with this negative language, is to talk to God instead and say, all right, you guide me, you tell me what to do. I want you to be with me. And just keep our thoughts moving there rather than to try to switch from negative to positive thoughts. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's a good point. What is the source or the direction that I want the energy to come from? And it's like taking a compass and going back to, say I'm going to true north, and realizing I may be off course a little. I may be off course a little bit. And I want to come from love. Love, I want you to be in charge. Love. And feeling, at the same time, feeling loved. That, you know what I'm saying? Creating the feeling of love and acceptance without having to feel negative and guilty. Because what we'll tend to do is start to feel guilty about being so negative. Now we're piling on top of the guilt, and the guilt's like an excuse. It's like paying ourselves, so now we can feel negative again. Because I then felt guilty, so I paid myself for that. So, you know, so it perpetuates a cycle. It's where it's coming from and dropping all the other stuff. And sometimes that's hard because we tend to hold on to, and analyze as opposed to, and that's a real good point of view. But the key to that is not trying to feel loved, hoping I feel loved, wishing. It's actually feeling loved and accepted. And imagining in yourself, what would it be like? What does it feel like to be that way? And if you need to, go hug a child and love a child and see what a child's energy is like when they feel loved and acceptance. And then picture yourself in your mind, your little child smiling and feeling loved and accepted. And it's that simple, without having to go through all the other stuff of feeling guilty, all this stuff, you can drop it. I've been told that you all have a break now. So we'll take a break for, I guess, 20 minutes, and we'll 15 minutes, and we'll start again. Thank you.